Okay, in this third part of this set of video tutorials, we will go through section 3C, question 1, part A. Okay? Now let us look at the question. This is a 10-mark part A question, and it requires you to explain the impact of labor productivity on the Singaporean economy. As usual, the way you analyze your question, first, the command word is to explain. You should be very familiar. The content is to analyze the impact of labor productivity. Okay, so first and foremost, you need to set out what exactly is labor productivity and how is it that we can illustrate labor productivity using the frameworks that we have learned before. Okay, next, you have to, of course, explain all these in the Singaporean context. Okay, let us just look at the overview of the essay question. In the intro, you will define for me what's labor productivity. Okay, and you will also provide an overview of the effects that you will be talking about in the economy. Okay, in this case, I chose to classify the effects in terms of internal and external effects on the economy. Okay, it is up to you to choose whether you want to use internal versus external. Maybe you want to use positive or negative effects. So these kinds of classification is really up to you. Okay. Now in the body itself, what you want to do is, firstly, you need to explain and illustrate labor productivity through the ADAS framework. Okay, we want you to know how labor productivity is illustrated using the ADAS diagram. Then after that, you will talk about the internal and external effects. Okay, I already give you a sort of like a teaser about what are the effects that I'll be talking about. We will go through that in detail in the next few slides. In the conclusion, what you will do is to summarize your impacts and any other further comments around this topic that you might have. Okay, the first point is to explain and illustrate labor productivity through the ADAS diagram. Okay, and from there we would then see what are the internal effects. Okay, so firstly, an increase in labor productivity implies an improvement in the quality of labor. So basically, every unit of your labor can produce more goods. It means that the quality of labor is better. Okay, now if you recall, labor is one of the 4 factors of production. And if you have an improvement in the quality of a factor of production, it would increase your productive capacity in the economy. Okay, by the way, I chose to talk about an increase in labor productivity, okay, rather than a decrease. Okay, it feels more natural in that sense because most of the time labor productivity actually increases. Okay, so in a sense, we want to analyze the impact of an increase in labor productivity on the Singapore economy. Okay, so now let's go back to the question. So if your productive capacity of the economy increases, the long run average supply curve, or the LRAS, shifts to the right. Okay, if you recall, the LRAS is just the vertical part of your AS curve. Okay, so this is your standard ADAS diagram. I have a case where my economy is producing at full employment output. That is the vertical part of AS. So what happens then is that my LRAS shifts to the right. Okay, so from AS0 to AS1. Then you will, from here, you will be able to see what are the internal impacts. The first internal impact, very clearly, is that there will be a decrease in the GPL. Okay, from P0 to P1. Okay, now you need to be able to explain why there is a fall in GPL. Okay, so with the increase in productive capacity, suppliers are willing and able to produce more at each price level. Okay, and therefore, with more goods being produced at each price level, your GPL will fall. Okay, And the next thing is there will be an increase in real national income. Okay, And with an increase in real national income, you will see a decrease in cyclical unemployment. Okay? Now, let us move on to the next internal impact. Now, you need to realize here that increases in labor productivity may not be even across all industries. That means in certain industries, the labor productivity will increase by, say for example, a lot. Okay? While other industries, they may only increase by a little or even not at all. Okay? Then if that's the case, the economy would then restructure itself to focus more on the industries with higher labor productivity output. Okay? With higher labor productivity output. And naturally, with this kind of restructuring of the economy, there will be structural unemployment. So now, after you finish the internal effects, we will move on to the external effects. Okay? Now, remember in the ADS diagram, you see a fall in GPL. Okay? It means that when there is a fall in GPL, it means that your exports are actually becoming cheaper to foreigners. Okay? And if exports become cheaper, the quantity of your exports increase, and assuming that exports are price elastic, the export revenue will also increase. Okay? And not just that, it means that your domestic goods become relatively cheaper compared to the imports, which necessarily means consumers would substitute away from imports to domestic goods. Okay? So they consume more domestic goods instead of imports. And if that's the case, again, your imports will decrease and import expenditure will also decrease. So the net effect of these two, which is an increase in export revenue and a fall in import expenditure, is that your overall balance of trade improves. Okay? From the previous slide, we learned that export revenue will increase and import expenditure will decrease. Okay? Now, what this means is that there will be an increase in demand for domestic currency and a decrease in supply of the domestic currency in the international foreign exchange market. Okay? Now, let me just go through this in detail. Okay? When your exports increase, you are actually selling more to foreigners, right? Now, the foreigners have to pay you back in your domestic currency, which means they have to go to the international forex market to demand your domestic currency, to buy your domestic currency, right? That results in an increase in demand for the domestic currency in the international forex market. Okay? Now, for supply, what happens is that your import expenditure decrease, meaning you are importing less from foreigners. Okay? When you import less from foreigners, it means that you need less of their currency. Okay? Now, you must think of it this way. How do you get their currency? You will go to the international forex market and use your currency to change for their currency. Okay? When you do that, when you want more of their currency, your supply of your domestic currency will increase. Okay? But in this case, you are wanting less of their currency because you are importing less. Okay? You want less of their currency, therefore the supply of your domestic currency will also fall, because you need less of their currency. Okay, hope that makes sense. If you are confused, again, you can come to me for consultations. Okay. Now, because of that, your domestic currency appreciate. Now look, there's an increase in demand and a decrease in supply. Alright, so basic demand and supply analysis would tell you that your value of domestic currency would increase, will appreciate. Okay, and the the issue here is that exporting firms would then find it very difficult to export when the domestic currency strengthens or appreciates. Okay. So basically that is just an analysis on the external and internal impacts that labor productivity may put on the Singapore economy. So that's about enough. You got 2 each. What then do? You summarize the impacts, and you use internal and external effects. And under the internal effects, we saw an increase in real national income and a lower GPL. We also see that there may be economic restructuring that result in certain people losing their jobs through structural unemployment. Okay. For external effects, we see that there is an improvement in balance of trade, and partly because of the improvement in balance of trade, there is actually an appreciation of domestic currency, and that affects your export industry negatively. Okay. Now, so this is all for section 3C, question 1A. Now, for section 3C, question 1, part B, you will actually be doing it as written homework to be submitted to me by next week. Okay, by the first lesson next week. So I will give you more instructions on that in the second tutorial. Okay, so thank you for listening. I hope you have enjoyed these 2 sets of video tutorials. If you think that it is fun, you think that it is effective, do let me know. Then we can think about whether we want to continue this form of learning for the rest of the topics this year. Okay, thank you very much. Bye bye.